So tape has been released of an interaction between Democratic leadership and a progressive running for office in Colorado's 6th district. Now, the person in question is Levi Tillemann. Tillman. And he is running in a Democratic primary against Jason Crow. So Tillemann, of course, is an author, an inventor, and a former official with the Obama administration's Energy Department. Now, he's running on a platform, of course, Medicare for All, clean elections, combating climate change, free community college, and fighting economic inequality, and, of course, fighting against corporate monopolies. It sounds like a pretty progressive platform. And, look, I like it. Now, his opponent, Jason Crow, happens to be a corporate lawyer. Now, look, Crow also is like, hey, let's not take corporate PAC money. That's a good decision, of course, and running on gun control, but nothing about Medicare for All or anything like that. Now, I wonder who the Democratic establishment, who is very pro-business, pro-corporate, is going to back in this race. Well, we don't have to wonder. As you're going to hear, Steny Hoyer, who is the number 2 Democrat in the House behind Nancy Pelosi, is going to try and convince Tillman to drop out. Listen.
You would like me to get out of the race.
And you keep saying, I would like you to get out. And of course, that's correct.
Yeah. I know you're fundraising for Crow.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm for Crow. I am for Crow because a judgment was made very early on. I didn't participate in the decision.
So your position is a decision was made, very early on before voters had a say. That's fine because that's the DCCC knows better than the voters of the 6th congressional district, and we should line up behind that candidate.
That's certainly the consequence of our decision. There are 2 things I'd like you to consider. One may be easier than the other. First would be if you stay in the race. And frankly, I would hope you would not. I'll get to that. But if you stay in the race, it is not useful to the objective to tear down Crow. Crow's clearly the favorite. That doesn't mean you win. It just means he's the favorite.
So here is the number 2 Democrat in the House saying, hey, look, you might as well drop out. We've already chosen our candidate. So just end your campaign already. I'm telling you right now, this is what we've already had of a candidate. But, hey, if you decide to still run, which I strongly advise against, well, don't harm our candidate by tearing him down. Now, remember, from their perspective, anything that could be even remotely negative or even policy differences was considered by Democrats to be tearing them down. Oh, we can't do that. We can't make policy differences. No. You can't contrast yourself with policy. What you need to do is you need to make a case that the other guys are worse. That's what the Democrats are literally doing. They're like, well, we can't distinguish ourselves from each other, or we shouldn't distinguish ourselves from each other. No, we need to run on the Republicans are bad. But wait, how is that going to energize people to turn out to vote for you if all you're saying is the other guys suck? Yeah, but what are you going to do? What's your position? Well, we don't have to have a position because Donald Trump is bad and the Republicans are bad. Well, that's not a way to win an election. Now, and look, when it comes to the primaries, what's the point of having a primary if you can't distinguish yourself from your opponent? If you can't point out your differences from your opponent? It doesn't make any sense. But see, that's the whole point. They're like, no, we don't want you to do that because then we're afraid that you're going to vote for the other guy, the guy that we have not chosen, the guy that's not going to be business friendly. And that's the whole point. They want somebody who's business and corporate friendly, somebody who, will take the donor money, somebody who will do what the donors say, someone who will vote in line with the Democratic establishment. And that's the problem here. Now, Tillemann, he's going to respond to this, and you're going to love his response. Take a listen.
So before we go any further on that, Crow is the favorite. In no small part, Congressman Hoyer, because the DCCC not only put its finger on the scale, but started jumping on the scale very early on. And I'm born and raised a Democrat. I mean, it's undemocratic to have a small elite select someone and then try to rig the primary against the other people running. And that is basically what's been happening.
That's exactly what's been happening. He's 100% correct. And look, later on, Hoyer, and you should listen to the tape, I'll have the link in the description, says, yeah, look, we're shoveling money at Crow. You know why? Because that's what we do. That's how it's always done. We choose people ahead of time. We make the decision who to back before the voters. We then dump a whole shitload of money on them. And then we tell other challengers to either get out, or if you decide to stay in, don't harm our candidate. Because we know they're going to win, because we've already preordained their win. That's how you rig a primary, folks. And again, here's Stoyer saying, look, that's the way we've always done this. That's the way it happens. That's the way it's done. And look, again, you should listen to the entire exchange. It is incredibly illuminating. But look, to those who say, oh my God, there's no rigging of the primary. No, this is what happened in 2016. The establishment chose Hillary Clinton to be their favorite long before the voters had a chance to even choose. So, as a result of that, she had all the advantages going forward. And do you think that didn't have an impact on what happened in the primary? How many votes she got in the primary? How many votes Bernie Sanders got in the primary? Of course that had an impact. Again, she had everything ahead of time. Superdelegate support. She had a lot of the money. She had a lot of the leadership, or the majority of the leadership that was already behind her. People in places that could affect things like, for example, debate schedules to make sure that any competitor was not able to get their message out. That's how you rig a primary. And the problem here is that is the complete opposite of having a democracy. So the irony here is Democrats, right, calling it the Democratic Party, when ironically it's not democratic at all. There's no democracy in it. I mean, why even have a primary in the first place if you're going to just choose someone ahead of time? I don't give the Republicans a lot of credit, but when it comes to the primary, they actually let their voters choose. Now, again, a lot of their voters are insane. I mean, they choose insane candidates. But at least they have democracy. At least they believe, at least when it comes to their primaries, in some form of democracy. So, but of course, you could probably argue that, well, that's, how you end up with horrible people like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. But again, their voters are already monsters. And if we actually do this on the Democratic side, if we do this on the progressive side, then we might actually get candidates who actually give a fuck about the people. But you have, of course, power brokers like the number 2 Democrat in the House not wanting that. And you got the leadership that says, nope, we don't want that at all. Now, it is quite obvious that they have not learned anything since 2016. In fact, when this broke, you're going to love this. Nancy Pelosi decided to weigh in on this. Guess what she said? She said, quote, I don't see anything inappropriate in what Mr. Hoyer was engaged in. A conversation about the realities of life in the race as to who can make the general election. Oh, so it's the reality that we're just basically picking and choosing candidates to support in the primary way before the voters have had a chance. Again, a primary is supposed to be the voters choose, and then the party lines up behind the people after the people, the voters, have chosen. That's not what's happened. The establishment has lined up behind somebody before the voters even have a chance to make sure that that person advances to a general because of what they think will end up being better. Just trust us. We know better. The DCCC, the DNC, we know better than you. We know better than the voters what you want and what will actually win in a general election. Really. Well, you didn't know better in 2016. lost to an orange clown. And in the 8 years under President Obama, you lost over 1,000 seats. Maybe the reality is that you fucking suck at this. Maybe the reality is that you have no idea what the American people want because you're too busy figuring out ways to rig a fucking primary and serving your wealthy ass donors. Maybe that's the reality. It's no wonder you lose. Bunch of losers. Goddamn establishment Democrats are the worst. Liberals have the edge. Look at any poll. They have the edge on nearly every policy position. And yet, the Democrats still continue to lose. Why? Because it shows you that the Democrats are paid to lose. They choose people who don't back majority policy positions. They choose the weakest Democrats and they shower them with money. Why? So they can lose. They are paid to lose. They're weak on purpose. It's a good thing now that we have groups that are coming for these weak Democrats in primaries. You want to back somebody in the primary and stack it against them? Well, you know what? We know your tricks now. Okay? We know everything that you're doing. We know exactly how to counter that. We know how to fight that now. Because we've seen it before. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to keep fighting these people until losers like Pelosi and Hoyer and all the rest of these corrupt corporate Democrats get kicked out of office and replaced by real progressives. People who actually care. People who actually serve the people, the voters, and not their donors. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.